We've got 10 big games to pick this week coming up right now on this edition of Gridiron Central.
Georgia Northwestern Technical College wants to help put you to work. Our programs in business, health, industrial, and public service will train you for the jobs available today. GNTC offers schedules in day, evening, and online classes at 5 campus locations with financial aid options too. You are sure to find a career path that works for you with our variety of degrees, diplomas, and certificates available. Visit us in person or on the web at gntc.edu. Georgia Northwestern Technical College. Your career begins here.
Welcome to Gridiron Central. I'm your host, Jim Allred. Join me after being absent for a couple weeks, Matt Davis, my partner in crime. Always great to have him back. Matt, we were talking a little while ago before the show started about how difficult it is picking games this year. Just talk about that a little bit, because I know it's been tough for me. You know, obviously, my record shows. What do you think about that?
Well, you know, I mean, the obvious thing this time of year is you got a lot of non-region games on schedules, and that always makes it a little bit difficult because you see a lot of teams, you know, that you don't get to see on a regular basis, you know, playing against teams that you don't know a lot about, that you are familiar with to a degree based on what they've done the previous year, and then attrition and all those things going on. So the first few weeks of the season, it's always hard to try to make your picks because you just don't know what the teams are putting on the field yet. And so that always makes it difficult, but I can't necessarily put a finger on it, but something's even different this year. It seems even more difficult this year to make good picks, and I really struggled last week. So.
Well, and I think a lot of people did, and I think another thing, too, is some teams that traditionally win a lot of games haven't actually been winning many games this season as well. We actually opened the first game we're picking, Pepperell at Chattooga, what was a Region 7 AA game last year. Obviously, these are 2 non-region opponents this year. The Dragons 0-3, the Indians 1-2. What I think is a tough game to pick. I'll let you lead off, Matt.
I think it is a difficult game to pick, and one of the things when I was going back and doing my research for this game, that even though I realized it when I was looking it up to start with, but still surprises me, is this is the 3rd season in a row that Pepperell has lost 3 games to start the season, which really blows my mind. But when you look at the last 2 seasons that's happened, once they got into their region play, which doesn't start this week, by the way, because they're in a different region now than Chattooga, you know, once they got into that, they were able to reel off a few wins and make it to the playoffs. So they started to turn things around. Did you start to see that happen next week? In terms of offense, it looks like they've been picking up a little bit. But I think as the season's gone on, the competition that they played hasn't necessarily got more difficult like you saw with Chestatee last week. So this one's a hard one to pick. When you look at the matchup the last, 10 years or so, Pepperell's won this game every time since 2004. Unless I'm badly mistaken. But you've had some close games in there. I remember a couple of years ago, both teams scored more than 50 points. They were in overtime and had some really exciting finishes to the games. I think this could be a pretty close game as well. Both teams have kind of struggled out of the gate. I think Chattooga's offense, though, is starting to hit a little bit more of a stride and take some steps forward. And I think that's going to be the difference in this game. I think Chattooga's got a little bit more speed, a little bit more athleticism in terms of their offense, and I think they're going to find a way to outscore Pepperell.
Gotcha. I don't think that's a bad pick at all. Pepperell, I think their offense and their team started coming around again, especially late in the game against Chestatee. Came back, did not win the game, but did make a game of it. Chattooga obviously won last week. For me, it's all about the Fosters. Isaac and Isaiah Foster, however they go, so go the Indians. I'm going to say, I'm going to agree with Matt on this one. I think Chattooga's going to win. They're at home. I think their offense is just a little bit better, a little bit more in sync, but it would not surprise me if this goes overtime or if Pepperell wins the game. Another difficult game for me to pick, Bowden at Darlington. I will note this. Bowden and Darlington each lost their opening games this season to good teams.
Oh, yeah.
And then since then, they each play 2 opponents. The 2 opponents they've played have combined to go 1-10 so far this year. So we're not real sure on either foot here. Trey Edge has done extremely well for the Tigers. I'm going to go ahead and jump in and pick this one before Matt does.
Sure.
It's at Darlington. Darlington's look good. I'm going to go against the Tigers. I just think Bowden might be a little bit better than Darlington. Bowden did go a couple rounds in the state AA playoffs last year. But again, I think this is going to be a close game. It could be anyone's ball game, Matt.
The thing we know about Bowden is the fact that they have got a good running game.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, last week against Cedartown, they racked up like 585 yards on the ground. And they're going to run the ball at you. There's no question about it. They've got some really speedy guys that we got to see play against Model last year. You know, I'm a big believer in the offense of this team. However, Darlington, with Trey Edge, as you mentioned, he is very fast. They're going to have to contain him, and that's not easy to do, as you saw, you know, with Bremen a couple of weeks ago and some of the other teams that Darlington's played this year. So, you know, I think this could be a close game, but at the end of the day, I think that the fact that Bowden has a few more kids on their team than Darlington does, their roster being a bit bigger, I think they're going to have a little bit more talent, and as the game goes on, they're going to start to kind of wear that defense down with some of these speedy guys. But the thing about Darlington, we talk about this every week, they're very disciplined on defense, and so they could upset a team any given week, and it won't surprise me. But I do think Bowden's a little bit better of a team, particularly in the skill position, so I'll go with Bowden in this game too.
I think the key here is if Darlington's defense can force 3 turnovers, they will win this game. We'll do a couple of games real quick. Bremen at Rockmart. Games at Rockmart. I'm going to go with the Yellow Jackets. I don't have a solid reason why other than they're at home, but I will go with Rockmart in this one. Matt, I know you saw Bremen against Model, didn't you?
Yes, I did. And the thing about Bremen is they've got a couple of guys that can run the ball pretty well. If they're forced to throw, they had some decent success in the air towards the end of that game last week. But at the same time, you know, they're just not a very strong team. They're really not. They're not very big. They're not very strong. And in terms of speed, they're fairly limited there, just, you know, despite the fact they've got a guy or two that can run. Rockmart, they've got good athletes, as usual. As well, they're not very consistent, and you never know what they're going to do Friday night to Friday night. But I'm with you. I'm going with Rockmart in this game. I think they've got more athletes than Bremen does. Gotcha.
2 others will go real quick on North Murray at Calhoun. Look, Calhoun wins this one. Second and third string get lots of snaps in the second half. Matt, do you agree?
Yeah, I think Calhoun wins by at least 30.
Gotcha. The last one before a commercial break, Gordon Central at Ringgold. Look, Ringgold lost to Daresville bad last week. They're going to take that out on Gordon Central this week. Tigers win big.
Biggest surprise of last week for me was that Ringgold got shut out and got beat bad by Daresville. Thought it would have been the game of the week. Wasn't. As you mentioned, Ringgold is going to go crazy in this game.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think we were all saying this is going to be a great game, 35-0. I mean, I guess Daresville saw it coming. I don't think anybody else did. After the commercial break, we're going to talk about 5 more key games coming up Friday night. Stick around.
Georgia Northwestern Technical College wants to help put you to work. Our programs in business, health, industrial, and public service will train you for the jobs available today. GNTC offers schedules in day, evening, and online classes at 5 campus locations with financial aid options too. You are sure to find a career path that works for you with our variety of degrees, diplomas, and certificates available. Visit us in person or on the web at gntc.edu. Georgia Northwestern Technical College. Your career begins here.
Welcome back to the show. As always, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Georgia Northwestern Technical College, for bringing you the Emmy-nominated Gridiron Central to you for the last 8 seasons. 5 more games to talk about. We'll go through a couple of these quickly. Start off with Coahulla Creek at Sonoraville. I'm going to go with the Phoenix. I think the Phoenix are in good shape right now for that number 4 spot, possibly even the number 3 spot in the Region 6 AAA. Coming out of Region 6 AAA, they've looked good so far. Phoenix get another win. Matt, what do you think?
Offense. You know, Sonoraville's got a pretty darn good one. Last year they made the playoffs. I don't have a whole lot to add to this. They're just a much better team than of course, Coahulla Creek has been so far.
Gotcha. Heard County at Cedartown, probably a shocker here. The Bulldogs are 0-3 to start the season. Game is at Cedartown. I keep picking. I think I've picked Cedartown a couple times and been wrong. I'm going to go with Heard County in this one. Again, don't ask me completely why. I don't know if Cedartown's got it all together quite yet. Matt?
The reason I'm picking Heard County in this game is because the very first game of the season they played Fitzgerald and they held their own. They didn't win the game, but they were able to score, I think, 29 points in that game. Fitzgerald's a really good football team. Cedartown, unfortunately, they've got a lot of room to grow right now that Nick Chubb is not there. So I'm going to go with Heard County as well.
Gotcha. Interesting game. Rome at Creekview. Rome opens up Region 7 5A play Friday night on the road. Rome is 0-2 on the season. So far, we've seen the new offense, good at times, sputtered at times, lots of lots of drops. I guess they have a case of the drop C's. Turnovers, few special teams miscues. Rome gets back on track. They win their first region game. Matt, what do you think?
It's been a weird season for Rome so far because they've got the 2 losses. They had the week where they had the weather delay situation that eventually turned out to be a game that they suspended and will not play. And, you know, this is an important game for them because the first 3 games were non-region. They're jumping into region play this week. This is a must-win game. This is a game they should win. Creekview's really struggled so far this season. Rome is a better team than Creekview.
Yes.
They must win this game, and I think they're going to find a way to do it.
And Matt makes a solid point here. You know, Rome has been in a region the last few years where every single game was a region game, so every single game had weight. This year, their first 3 games weren't region games. Of course, one of those was canceled. And just a side note, poor Newton County, the Rome game got canceled. Their next game got canceled due to lightning, too, after the first quarter. So Newton County hadn't played in forever and a day, basically. That being said, Rome's going to win this. They need to if they want to be in the mix in Region 7 5A. Horizon Christian at Unity, the mighty, mighty Lions coming up with a big win last week, the first win under the new reign of Coach Mark Ackerman. Look, this is Unity's homecoming game up at Ben Brady Field at Shorter. I think the Lions score and score a lot. It's going to be ugly. They're going to roll in this one. Matt, what do you think?
Well, I think one thing worth mentioning in this matchup, Horizon picked up their first win of the season last week against Hearts Academy. I'm not familiar with them at all. 40-2 was final score. One of the reasons for that is if you go on Max Preps and you look at their roster, there's 18 kids. Well, they've actually got 4 or 5 more on their roster now, and they're pretty good players at the skill position that have come from homeschool. Gotcha. So don't be surprised if Horizon Christian comes in and has a little bit more offensive firepower than you might expect coming into this game. But the good news is I think Mark Ackerman, and I don't know him very well, but I've had the opportunity to talk to him a couple of times. He's got a good football head on his shoulders, and he knows what it takes to get a program going. And so I'm kind of excited about what he's doing with this program right now, and I think he's going to have this team ready and not complacent coming into this game. And they've got some room to grow, but they're definitely improving under his tutelage this season. And so I think that Unity will win this game. They spoiled a homecoming last week. They don't want theirs spoiled this week. So I think they do enough to get past Horizon Christian, but it might be closer than you might think.
Gotcha. Obviously, Matt has inside information I was not privy to. I'm still picking Unity on that one. What we'll also say is Unity will have a couple weeks off after this game to get ready for GICAA region play. Of course, that is, let me see if I get it, Georgia Independent Christian Athletic Association, I believe.
Hey, you did better than me, man.
You know, it used to be the ICSGA, now they're the GICAA. Hopefully this is the last of the alphabet soup leagues I've got to worry about. One more game to talk about before we cut away from the show. That's Pinecrest Academy of Tryon. The Bulldogs, 3-0 on the season, currently sit number 2 in the Class A public school power rankings. Of course, in Class A, the power rankings determine your playoff seeding. Obviously, with 3-0 with wins against 3 higher classification teams, the Bulldogs look good. That can come crashing down if they lose to Pinecrest. This was a loss last year. I believe it was 10-8. Tryon need to get the wing tee going, need to get that defense smothering. I do believe Tryon wins this game. I think they've played some tougher opponents. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, I think so too, but you mentioned the ranking that they have right now because of playing these higher classified teams. Gordon Lee, Almerchi, and Lafayette. And so even though they are in those higher classifications, you know, Almerchi and Lafayette in particular really kind of struggling there. So I don't put too much weight into that, But at the same time, you know, Tryon is a good football team. I just don't think we know after those three opponents how good they're going to be yet this year. This will be a test for them. You know, you mentioned Pinecrest Academy. They have wins over Walker and North Springs. Those two teams combined for only one win.
Yeah.
So they're another team that I don't think we know a tremendous amount about in terms of how good they are. But Tryon's playing this game at home. I think they're a better team than Pinecrest, so I'm going to pick them to win.
Gotcha. We agree on that one. Actually, crazily enough, he and I are agreeing on a lot of stuff. That's either really good or really bad for this week, folks. Join us Friday night at rn-c.com and Prep Central Online. Live scoring updates from our games later on, articles and photos from games. And, of course, next Wednesday, we'll break down all the key matchups you're going to need to know. Where's radio at this week?
We're going to be at Unity for their homecoming.
You've got Unity for the homecoming. Well, that will be a great place to be. For Matt Davis, I'm Jim Allred, of course, for Jackson Witzel as well, saying we'll see you on the sidelines.